journey to understand, if it's for them or
Yeah.
not. Anyway, I think we are live, and Samir, you can send the link. Welcome everyone. Not to make you all nervous that, but today, if we are live and some VCs watching it, hopefully they should also see, founders, how frustrated they are with 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 the overall ecosystem. And what's really happening, right? I mean, Ankan, we started the conversation. I'll put you straight in. Told him that we'll be doing this thing to create a thesis, and he said, "Do we even need one?"
Hmm. So, my point of view, if you see as a founder, I would definitely say that e-mobility can be created as a thesis, but then and people can bet on it. Okay, undoubtedly, on the global level, we are seeing some good advancements. India is growing. But if you think it from an investor's lens, probably if I would have been investing in something, so I would have said, no, not a different vertical, but maybe integrate into a subpart. So it's kind of maybe from founder lens, I would want that because I know that it will work. But when I'm putting my money at stake, I'll probably be hesitant. That's my point of view. Yeah.
So, Neeti, you also now, raised a point in the morning that it should be broadened the scope. But firstly, trying to counter what Ankan is saying, I'm almost feeling like Arnab Goswami, you know, that from the investor's point of view, do we need one? Firstly.
Definitely yes. But as we were
Hmm.
speaking this morning, that it can't be just EV, because EV is just, in my opinion, EV is just the most visible application of electrification, which is the larger thesis. This is how I
Hmm.
view it. Um, Electrification in itself has been around. The need for it is evident because of the various oil shocks that we've seen, plus the demand is always growing. And slowly, so as I was saying in the morning, like EVs have always been around. India had its first EV in 1900s. So it was an electric taxi in Kolkata. So we did not have a grid infrastructure, but we had our first EV before that. But then it disappeared altogether because Ford had its manufacturing prowess. The availability of your normal fossil fuel cars was pushing, and there were other subsidiaries that were extended. um, Now things are changing, so I think the adoption is driven by availability, the cost, and there has to be some shock factor, like it could be a oil shocks, or it could be a policy driving it very harshly. But then again, these are very volatile, right? So if you're constructing a thesis just in EV, then that won't be a very robust thing to do for your larger fund thesis. So as Ankan was saying, I do think if someone has a thesis in EV, it has to be extended to the larger thesis of electrification, or even the larger value chain of EV. Like, don't just look at EV as to manufacturing. So that's where the most funding is also moving today. It's around like 60-70% is just in manufacturing the mopeds
Hmm.
or your three wheelers and things like that. But no one's
Yeah.
looking at infra, no one's looking at the ancillary things. I mean, there are investments in battery segment also, but then
Yeah.
they're marginal as you compare to other things. In India being a consumer economy, like your EV startups are competing with your Swiggies and Zomatos and likewise, right? So it's a tough tug of war that's happening. So
Yeah.
definitely, like on the investor side, yes, expanding the thesis would make more sense. Capturing more of the value chain end to end, not just the vehicles in itself, but say battery swapping infrastructure, and it's already happening. You see movement in that also. So yeah, that's what I think. Expanding the thesis makes most sense right now.
So let's expand it today then. Tanvir actually has moved beyond all this and he started reselling EVs. So he's ahead of the curve that way. Right, Tanvir?
Yeah, 100%. We've been in this space for so long. Like I feel I got into EVs 11 years back. So before anyone, like a lot of people were not even thinking about it. So yeah.
Hmm.
So now we see that the next wave is about reselling of used EVs, and there's a lot of what do you say, trust issues there, which we need to solve for. and that's what Trustera is doing, and that's where we are. So yeah.
ये तो आपकी पिच हो गई मतलब but
Larger thesis में see
uh,
larger thesis. I see you when you are talking about EV thesis, right? So it's primarily it has to start from a conviction that mobility has problems and mobility has scope that needs to be looked at, which, as I was saying before we started, that logistics, सबको logistics समझ में आता है, logistics में लोगों ने पैसे लगाए, delivery आया, shadow facts आया, even the first wave of EV was all fleet operators, and then everything stops, right? So logistics समझ में आया लोगों को, Uber समझ में आया, and after that everything stops. But mobility is much deeper, right? Mobility is not just those vehicles, and mobility is not just logistics. Mobility is how everyday interaction, right? It's not only vehicles running on road, it's cycles is mobility, and 10 things that you do around how you move from place A to place B, that is mobility. And it goes without saying that mobility in India is one of the biggest challenges, right? We don't have a good walking score. We don't oil shocks hurt us a lot. Uh, Cars overpower every new infra that we build. So 100% there is disruption that can happen there. VCs can obviously help. The thesis is needed, and that thesis cannot be only around कि हाँ अच्छी गाड़ी कौन बनाता है, अच्छी मोटर कौन बनाता है, अच्छी बैटरी कौन बनाता है. The thesis is about looking at solutions, right? I think that is the deeper question as far as EV thesis is concerned. But 100% uh, investors need to look at uh, mobility in the larger form and then focus on two solutions, which I would say, which is alternate fuels, which is hydrogen is also one, EV is also one, and flexi fuels are there. So alternate fuels more than EV, I think makes more sense.
alternate fuels more than EV. Good, then you're aligned to the part that we have to work on the thesis, but on a larger scale, as I think what Neeti also said. Shubham, you had a point about the commercial EV part, right? He still feels that EV itself is needs that thesis, right?
So, before going to the thesis, I have few data points. So in India, what happening in the EV space as per the data point is in the commercial side, definitely electric three-wheeler has right now 60.9% in financial year 26, and that was up from 57.2 in mobility. So last it was 57.2. This year it is 60.9. So it's a great raise in this side. Apart from that, if we go for the faster three-wheeler, higher speed like EVs that they're going for the commercial side. So that was one of the fastest winning domain. And here, like what my point is most of the VCs are still figuring out are we need to go for the faster EVs or we need to just stick with that thing because that platform is performing in the good manner. Like it's a raise of 5% in last 1 year, and now now the fastest going past is the faster EV. Some companies are building it. Still, there is a challenge in terms of hardware when building in the India, and or they are supplying it from the outside that will make the OPEX part and the CAPEX part impacted. So apart from this side, if we have to go for few more region in the EV side, good carrier is the one of the newest domain that's very early. So in January to July, if I can see the data, so there is 3.7% EV raise in that side, and like that's very early side. But if in India that part will go, so as Tanvir is saying, ki alternate fuel is the segment, so that part will go in action because it's commercial, and everyone wants that part to be in the road as per the climate point of view, as per the rest of the thing. So my point is, yeah, from the VC perspective, definitely this data point will make sense. But right now, for the early stage companies who are raising in that segment, only big VCs who are going for the after pre-series A, they are more impacted with that thing because funds are like the early stage fund less than 5 CR1 will not make sense because they have heavy capex and opex in that segment. Uh, what do you say, Chetan? Chetan,
No, I
Tanvir,
was
and
I was I was thinking when you were talking that when you're talking about fund size, right?
yeah.
You definitely need bigger funds because of the requirement in capex, and that's what VCs in general right now, some of them are very big, but I think the early stage fund then cannot participate in this whole ecosystem, right? Because for them, the money is not enough to be put. Then we need bigger players to put in more money, not just in first round, but I think carry on in the next rounds as well, because it's not like it's a long game. I mean, ideally, I feel a lot of times it's actually a patient capital game also in a lot of sectors in EV. It's not just a VC game, typical VC game, but because I mean, I don't know how many EV startups, maybe we can name them, who has already given returns in the 5, 7 years, right? Because the ecosystem is building. How will you expect even returns in the 5, 7 years horizon, correct? So I guess
Yeah.
that's one thing. But having said that, I think both Ankan, Niti told me, and Tanvir also, I know, are raising funds. So maybe briefly we can also touch upon what you are building, just so that everybody knows, that how this discussion is relevant to you. Maybe Ankan, you can start first with your sort of elevator
Okay.
pitch, what you are building, so that everybody knows. And then Tanvir, you have already talked about it.
Right.
And then we start off,
I'll go
we
last.
kind of cater, yeah, we cater to why how we can structure this, because otherwise uh, there's no start, right? So maybe with the basis of today's discussion, instead of catering to every piece of the ecosystem, which we cannot in this discussion today, maybe we only focus on one aspect and then deep dive on that. That is how I would like to structure the discussion.
Hmm. Okay. So in that case, I would basically define this. Okay. So everyone in this e-mobility sector, right? When you talk about e-mobility, you feel it's two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, bus, trucks, and you limit yourself to road transport. Okay. But there's much beyond. Okay. For example, drones. Drones are also running on batteries, right? But then typically when you say e-mobility, you don't click that, right? So a drone is something, okay, drone tech, a different thing. So we are basically working on an integrated platform in terms of power management, which is sufficient enough to make a drone as well as a four-wheeler, a two-wheeler, a bus, a truck being charged through the same platform. Okay. Now, building this is a lot more troublesome in India than in the West or maybe in China. Okay. Because they have that technical layer or the intelligence layer which knows to manage power. Okay. In India, it's more like we adopt second-hand tech and not build it first-hand. Okay. That is where we are basically coming in. So we are building the intelligence layer, which can basically the same control board can identify a drone and power it accordingly. And then another myth I would say, okay, you see an AC and DC charger. Even OEMs state that AC charging is beneficial for your battery pack. Okay, but it is not about how much. In that case, you should throw your iPhones and OnePlus because they offer you fast charging, right? So we are trying to make that sensible choice that, okay, a charger can be compatible to everything provided we have the right tech in-house. So that is the tech we are building. Soon you would say maybe another couple of years, you would see some of the things which we are building in the market where you can see probably a drone is also charging using the same machine and your cycle is also being charged, and then suddenly a truck comes that also works through. So that is what we are building on a overall pick.
On the platform level, right? So, Tanvir,
Right.
I'll ask you because Niti already knows what Ankan is building. What do you think about it? Were you able to understand exactly the value prop? And, like, how would you explain that?
No, so I think it's very interesting what Ankan is making, and value prop in India. Uh, I think it's still far away because I come from an energy background, started in solar, so I understand
Mhm.
the challenges and I understand what you were talking about. Uh, so from an energy perspective, if you are looking at building the infra in such a way that all the multiple vehicles can come, 100%, if it works, it's going to be a game changer. But as you rightly said, the complexity for India is huge, and the complexity starts on the ground. पहले complexity है कि utilities के साथ partner करके उनको समझाना, because I'm pretty sure in this there will be some play of utilities. The second complexity is that
Mhm.
Indian customers are not uh, uh, we in my experience, they require things very simple, right? ये इसके लिए है, ये इसके लिए है. If you are saying कि यार एक ही के अंदर आपको 10 चीजें मिल जाती हैं, and they lose out, right? So right now, I
No, I'm
think
not
it's still
saying.
some time away.
Okay, I'm not saying the same thing will be used for that. I'm just saying it's like Intel can be used, different processors can be used for different laptops, right? But then Lenovo may use or someone else may use. So that intelligence layer can be commonized. You can make one charger
Yeah,
which is for drones only. That so what I'm saying is don't go for 100 different options to basically power your intelligence. Rather have one thing which can go well with everyone. That's what. Yeah.
no, understood. So I think then a little bit difference from what I understood. But any which ways, Chetan, I think that is a challenge. That is a challenge today
Hmm.
also, right?
So, Ankan,
Any
that's
infra that
probably,
is put, it's very specific.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
So
that's what,
essentially,
Ankan, you would also
yeah.
face an issue. Just to explain, maybe Niti, I think you were adding on to that.
Yeah. So I was just simplifying what Ankan's building through Tycent. So it's basically in the infrastructure layer, because see, right now also when you see in the mobility, you have these tiers, right? So you have your three-wheelers that are getting a lot of capital, easy capital, three-wheelers and two-wheelers. Now that's little saturated. Now you're seeing some interest in the infra part, although like it's just marginal, like 2 to 3% of the total investment is going into that. So he's essentially solving for the infra needs. And very interestingly, what you see is that so in the West, both US and China have proven theses that you need infra first and then the adoption will follow. Interestingly, in India, we flipped that. In India, we are seeing that the two-wheeler, three-wheeler adoption is faster, even though the infra is not there. So now that gives us a space wherein we know for sure that infra is going to be required, because we are seeing more number of cars and there's an infra deficit. So that's what he's trying to solve. And like I keep telling him that you should just say that you want to make EV charging hubs as available as petrol pumps. That's essentially what they're trying to
That's
do.
the pitch. Yeah.
And
That
like
that
how in petrol,
probably,
yeah, you see a
yeah.
truck, see a bus, you see all sorts of vehicle coming in. You also have a different thing. So that's the vision, so that everyone can think of buying EVs very easily. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very adoption driven segment, as I was saying, and infra is going to play a big uh, what do you say, a factor through which consumers are making decisions. Although that's not true in your three-wheelers and three-wheelers specifically, because the three-wheeler adoption is happening because government has stopped issuing permits to any new auto that is not EV. Even natural
Hmm.
gas autos are not getting their permit. So that's little more driven by policy. But for your but for your four-wheelers, it's essentially the infra availability, like how much are you driving per day and things like that. I think
So
Shubham
he's
has something.
solving the infra problem, and in simple words. Of course, in
Yeah.
complex words, you explained the AC/DC and all, but it will be good for investors to always simplify. So Niti gave the right pitch, right? That way. But yeah, then the
Yeah.
second level of
It's
problem will
that
be how do
pitch,
you.
bro.
Yeah, I'm saying the second level problem will be then how do you differentiate? That's the, we'll get on to your pitching part maybe in another of the live stream. We also do pitch
Correct.
tear down live stream, so I'm happy to talk about that as well in that. But I think we all understood what you're building and why it's important. And Shubham, before we talk, I just want to say that I think for today's discussion, Tanvir, if you are okay with it, I know Trustera is on the other side little down the value chain. But since you've been in the ecosystem, maybe we start with first talking about the infra. Who are the players? Where are the gaps right now? Where are the opportunities to build? And then also from the VC standpoint, what should they be looking? That can be the first topic because I think everything starts from the infra, right? Or can we go further back and
No,
talk
no,
about the,
100%.
yeah, so we can do that, right, Shubham? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have few points like what Ankan has said, but that's the major thing that we required. But during my conversation with the VCs, what I understood is like in India right now, the major problem is the adoption and adoption. Apart from adoption, like as we are making different kind of EV vehicles, like that can be three-wheeler, that can be two-wheeler, and that can be buses and any kind of heavy vehicles that carry some kind of goods and all. So in all that segment, first thing is the hardware that needs to solve, and as per that, the charging and the rest of the things is going to be at the similar level. Like just taking example of the Type C. Before that, there are every company of different type of chargers and different type of power output will be required. And I think in the EV case, investor will first want to check, like, is there all the EV companies are making that charging or that battery consumption thing at the same level, and then they will become at the same page, because this thing can be scaled, and for that they need that unified infrastructure for that point. So what do you say, like before, like as per the thesis point of view, I think this thing will be like heart of it.
बस ठीक है, then we can start on that then, on that note. So Tanvir, from your understanding, and anybody can chip in, like right now, how are you seeing the infra getting sort of evolved in the next 5 years? Like, what are government plans? Maybe if somebody knows about the government plan, we can talk about that, and we can also dig in later on. But in terms of the government, because government is going to play a crucial role in the infra, right? So you cannot build infra without government being involved. So it's important to also talk about what is the government doing right now as far as infra goes. Is it doing good, well, can do better? What do you think right now?
No, I think let's, as you rightly said, let's take a step back. ठीक है, पहले infra. So where does the problem actually lie, right? India has, मतलब जहाँ हाथ रखो, there is a challenge and there is an opportunity. So if we are talking about infra only related to consumers adopting electric vehicle, I think for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, it's more or less solved. They don't need a lot of support on public infra, and that is visible from how swapping was never promoted, how the specific two-wheeler fast charger protocol like CCS2, a gun two-wheeler has a protocol that's not being promoted that to that level because it's not needed, right? In India, जहाँ charge, मतलब, so more or less, because I've, as you already know, my previous startup was into battery swapping. So we lobbied the government कि swapping should get subsidies, swapping should get GST benefits because that's the future. Government ने नहीं किया, consumers ने रास्ता निकाल लिया, market अभी चल रही है. So nothing is needed on the, like, not a lot on the infra side is needed as far as two-wheeler, three-wheeler is concerned. The opportunity now lies in trucking. The opportunity now lies with buses. Opportunity now lies with cars. And from that angle, I think there is more than enough infra as far as the cars are concerned for the uptake to happen. Government has given the required subsidies, and there's a lot of work happening at the utility end also because they understand there is huge opportunity. So utilities are investing. So if you look at Tata as a utility, the DISCOM, significant money Tata Power is putting into it. So from that angle, utilities are investing into it. So infra aa raha hai. The problem here is one step above that, right? So the problem is, as Ankan said, right? Uh, how do you get the intelligence from this infra? Because everything is right now in silos and very segregated, right? How do you make sure that when you reach a charger, that charger is still functional, right? So these kind of gaps is where we need to work on, because that is where the trust of the consumer gets broken, right? Charger दिख रहा है, Google Map पे भी दिख रहा है, किसी ऐप पे भी दिख रहा है, and when the customer reaches there, वो charger खराब है या वो parking available नहीं है. So I think chargers लग चुके हैं, significantly लग चुके हैं, and it is something that will continue. Government has given subsidies, right? I don't feel that it's a chicken and egg problem right now, right? Because every OEM is investing into it. Slow charging, home charging solves most of the requirements that we have, right? So fast charging infra से जो fear, anxiety solve होती है, बस उतनी होती है. As far as once a customer buys it, majority times वो slow charging घर पे ही हो रही है. Fast charging is only like once in a month, twice in a month. Highways पे जाना है, कहीं करना है, तो that fear and anxiety gets solved. Right now, I think the focus from the infra side, if you have to just look at infra, I will say it is about uptime, it is about availability. लग गया है तो available होना चाहिए. It is about how you interact with that infrastructure. It should be very seamless. It should not be like one is using UPI, the other does not take UPI, one has an RFID, the other has a QR code. I think there's a lot work, like there's a lot of work that can be done, a common layer that can be built. And when you say infra around EVs, again, just adding a segue to it, does not mean in only the charging infra. It means everything that is required to run an EV properly, right? Today, the biggest challenge in infra is EVs are on the road, but there are no service centers. EVs are on the road, but OEMs have not opened their supply chain. So the reason India has such a high adoption of vehicles, हर नुक्कड़ में ठीक हो जाती है, because there is something called as ODM parts, right? Specs are same as OEM, but these are made by other manufacturers. Today, the entire supply chain of EV is controlled by the OEMs. You don't get spare parts outside. So because everything is so closed loop, right? That infra is missing. So that's what, when you look at infra, there is a lot of work and there's a lot of opportunity which comes in after service, after sales, uptime, intelligence, as Ankan was saying, right? So this is from my side, gist of where work needs to happen, and it makes sense for this to be looked at.
तो बैटरी स्वैपिंग में कोई कुछ नहीं चाहिए अभी. मोस्टली पीपल कंज्यूमर्स हैव
No,
एड्रेस
battery
दैट.
swapping,
सो
battery swapping, battery swapping came in with like a utopian answer, utopian solution, but today it is just a gig worker play. Gig workers को ही समझ में आता है और उसके ऊपर कुछ नहीं. And the beauty, or let's say the lack of it, is it's a very limited uh, opportunity.
ठीक है. So
Yeah,
so
but
just to structure this, yeah, Niti, sorry,
infra,
go
I
ahead.
wanted to just add a minor point because we were talking about infra. So although infra needs are sufficient for like individual car owners, but when you talk about the particular customer segment that is running on high usage, like your say trucks, they have to deliver 800 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers. So if they are doing that larger stretch of delivery, for them the infra might not be sufficient or reliable, as Tanvir was rightly pointing it out. Secondly, you have your fleet owners, right? Like someone who would have 10, 20 taxis, and these people are constantly doing trips. So they don't know whether, although they've charged their vehicle in the night, but during the day, they don't know how many trips they're going to do. And let's say morning May, they were able to do, say, 15 trips, and now they need to charge. So now, if they are at a locale where there's no charging point, then their vehicle is completely shut, right? So that kind of reliability is also not there. So when we are seeing the adoption where it's picking up, it's more in the fleet owners, it's more in your three-wheelers and autos. So these people are typically doing these passenger services for Uber or for individual level. For them, the infra gap is still there, and there could be a real value add. And we're talking about your tier two also when we talk about this. Especially in North, you'll see that a lot of autos are already electrified. For them, the infra is very insufficient. So I think maybe tier one is exhausted in terms of creating the baseline infra, but tier two has a lot of opportunity.
And we're
No, this
talking
is, I
both
think I'll
both
add.
commercial and personal, right? Just to be clear, we are talking.
More commercial than personal, because see, personal you can sort it, like you can leave your two-wheeler or even car on charging from your domestic connection, like whatever you're getting from the government, puri raat rakh do,
Yeah,
charge kar ke, and that's sufficient. Next day anyway you're just going to your office, you're not
yeah,
using it that much. So a normal homeowner, if their commute is, let's say, 25 to 30 kilometers, versus a
yeah,
taxi driver whose commute is, say, 300 kilometers in a day. 300 is a bit of a stretch, but say 75 kilometers in a day.
yeah.
So where the usage is high, the infra supply is not very robust, I'd say. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's also not invisible, but it's not
Yeah.
robust. It needs to be strengthened and more reliable.
India is so big. I mean,
So I'll
it's
just
just
add.
like in general also, right? इतनी तो बड़ी country है उसमें. I don't think so in terms of, just give me a ballpark number in terms of the infrastructure. uh, where are we? Like अभी तो 5-10% ही होगा coverage, या ज़्यादा है मतलब EV का. I'm just assuming maybe like if you are driving from north to south, मतलब कश्मीर to Kanyakumari,
Today, all
can you
all
do
all
that?
highways are electrified. Kashmir to Kanyakumari, you can easily plan your trip on an electric car without taking significant detours, आपको charging मिल जाएगी, आप कर सकते हो, and it has happened.
It
There,
has happened.
I agree with Niti. The demand and supply right now, Chennai to Kanyakumari, or the people taking EVs on highways are actually very few, right? उनके लिए मतलब suppose दिन की 4 गाड़ी जा रही हैं तो 4 चार्जर्स हैं, right? When this becomes mass, right? Obviously, I agree with Niti. The infra there is significantly less, but I think
Yeah.
जब वो mass होगा, because we've seen this happening, right? Now I was just sharing, adding to what Niti said, we work with small fleet operators. ठीक है, तो because we work in the second hand space, so second hand taxis, like we sell cars to people who just have like 5 taxis, 10 taxis, 20 taxis, and they're second hand cars. And these guys are usually in the tier 2, tier 3 towns only. Metros से गाड़ी निकल के वहां जाती है. Now, I was also of the same opinion कि भाई मेट्रो टियर 1 में बिक जाएगी, उसके आगे तो किसी को कुछ पता नहीं है. But you will be surprised that people are buying these vehicles from Delhi, taking them to far-flung towns of UP and running them in Uber, और वो अपना चार्जिंग इंफ्रा खुद संभाल लेते हैं. दे आर सो स्मार्ट, हमें कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है, राइट? इट इज देयर इज नथिंग नीडेड. वो उनको पता है चार्ज कैसे करना है, उन्होंने चार्जिंग संभाल लिया, उन्होंने कर भी लिया सॉल्व. They are not waiting for anyone to come. In fact, they prefer doing it on their own, because these companies which are doing charging infra as a service, they are charging 20 rupees, 22 rupees, 25 rupees a unit plus whatever, right? इतने में धंधा नहीं बनेगा. The cost at which the business has to work, if a person is a small fleet operator, 5 गाड़ी चला रहा है, वो 12 rupees a unit पे काम होता है उसका, खुद कर लेता है, रेंट देने के बाद, पैसे निकालने के बाद सब चल जाता है. This kind of pricing power, or let's say negotiating power, is available with bigger fleets, right? Which run in Uber. Like you have the Snappies of the world or Everest fleet of the world. ये उस टाइप की पावर इनके पास है to negotiate larger contracts. ये 5-5 वालों के पास, उनको 20 रुपए देने हैं, उसमें धंधा नहीं बनेगा. They will start losing money. So they prefer doing it on their own. Yes, I agree, वो fast charging, slow charging का gap है. But I think आज जिस तरह commoditize हो गए हैं, availability of chargers, OEM भी support करते हैं. There are a lot of solution providers who are supporting. Tier 2 towns के अंदर these people are putting their own chargers and running taxis. And
अच्छा.
this is something that we've done over the last 6 months. 5-5, 10-10 करके लेके जाते हैं, and they're running it locally, very happy.
So they've created their own infra sort of, in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
tier
अपनी
2, tier 3
अपनी
towns.
पार्किंग है, like नीति said, दिल्ली के अंदर और मेट्रो के अंदर टैक्सी चलाने का मतलब है 125-150 किलोमीटर a day. टीयर
Correct.
2 टाउन्स के अंदर टैक्सी चलाने का मतलब है मैक्सिमम 75 किलोमीटर a day, which is one single charge. उसने फिर रात
Correct.
को चार्ज किया, बीच में 1 घंटा कहीं लगा दिया अपनी स्लो चार्जिंग, एंड देन इट इज गुड विद हिम.
जरूरत ही नहीं
सो
है फिर तो, मतलब
हाँ,
पब्लिक
वी आर
चार्जिंग की.
मतलब
हाँ.
what I'm trying to say is we are giving too much weight to infra, because चिकन एग की तरह हम देखते हैं. ट्रक्स के अंदर आई एग्री, बसेस के अंदर आई एग्री, इंफ्रा इज अ चैलेंज.
Yeah.
बट अगेन वहां पे गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत पैसे लगाए हैं, और देर आर lot of work being done by JBM and the likes of JBM and all. तो वो चल रहा है, but that's again a very small segment in India, and it's going to continue growing, but slowly. As far as passenger cars are concerned, it's fairly robust now.
फेयरली रोबस्ट ऑलरेडी. चलो, गुड गुड अंकन.
Yeah.
गुड टाइम टू ब्रिंग यू. इंफ्रा की देखो कितनी बात कर दी है. अब आपको यही भेजना है बस VCs को कि कि whatever they are saying, we are solving for that.
No, but थोड़ा सा I just deviate a bit. Okay, the infra is enough for 5% of the vehicles what are running on the roads. Okay, if we have to get an motive of 30% of electric vehicles on the roads, probably it's not sufficient. And the government has its own reason. Okay, so suppose you turn on the suppose 10 people are there in a community. Okay, and 10 people suddenly one fine day out of nowhere that happens that 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. everyone has plugged in their vehicle to charge. Okay. Now imagine how the grid works. Okay. Now grid assumes, okay, at 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. this is the requirement of a specific locality. So the generators come active and they make the level to that required thing. Now what happens? one fine day, so if you overload that, okay, the generators will get crazy. Okay, they don't have the appetite to generate that much. That is when blackouts happen or power cuts happen. Now you don't see power cuts because government has been able to stabilize that. Now if they promote that without any intelligence layer, suppose tomorrow uh, I have a layer which says I can limit all the chargers in India to 50% of their capacity from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The government would definitely promote it. Right now it's not there. Okay, so government is thinking one fine day, one fine hour, if something like that happens, majority of the EVs start to fast charge, my grid will not be able to cater it. Okay, so government has its own set of excuses why I should not promote the EV to that extent till my grid is
I will
capable.
I will disagree. Uh, we had the same issue when we were installing solar power plants, right? So again, I
Hmm.
got into solar early, had my startup early 2010, 2011. Same issue, solar power plants, wind power plants, grid
Hmm.
destabilization, right? All these things government was promoting heavily. Government knew. आज EV
Hmm.
का भी उनको पता है. So when you talk to utilities, I'm pretty sure you are what you are building, you would have talked. But I'm just bringing my
Hmm.
example from the solar and wind side. uh, Government made it mandatory after a few tenders, right? That
Hmm.
there needs to be a capability to shut down the power plants, power down the power plants if the grid asks, right?
Hmm.
Peak. Same is happening with BESS also, right? Your peak
Hmm.
demand shaving, grid support, grid management. So government made it mandatory. So there is enough understanding at the government level कि यार wind coming into the grid is very seasonal, or let's say very cyclical. Solar has a very limited time. So how do you manage the grid? They understand on the EV side also how it needs to be done. So there are smart metering projects which are happening. अगर घर में आप
Hmm.
चार्जर लगा रहे हो connected to a smart meter, a lot of work there has to happen there. Now,
Correct.
what I'm missing out, because this is not the space where I am, but what I'm missing out is I doubt that it is because government is not ready, that they are not pushing for it. Grid management कैसे करनी है is an age old subject. मैं personally तो 10 साल से देखते आ रहा हूँ. Whether it
Okay.
is happening on the ground because of cost reasons or other reasons, or let's say consensus, because India की T&D everything is very distributed, उसकी वजह से अगर कुछ नहीं हो पा रहा, so I agree with you. But they know they have done
Yeah.
significant work already.
Hmm.
They might be knowing, but I think the point is कि एक साथ जब demand होगी, like let's say everyone has lunch hour and everyone decides to charge their car together, तब capacity building नहीं होगा maybe. Like the generators won't be able to generate ये जो additional cars आएंगे कल, imagine like 5 lakh EVs get added to the system because they are not replacing the fossil cars. These are getting added. तो ये जो extra energy
Hmm.
demand आया है उसको cater कर पाएगी कि नहीं, I think that is what he was pointing to. I have no
So right
knowledge
now,
of, so I'll have to research
yeah,
on
so
that.
right now government has put mandated battery energy storage in every single power plant that is installed specifically for this reason, right?
Right,
To manage these kind of peak demand, peak shaving. जब
right,
उनकी grid
Hmm.
destabilize हो रही है, they allow charging. When it requires power, they pull power, and the utility has that control to do it. कि यार जब हमें
right.
चाहिए हम ले लेंगे. So these are power
Okay,
banks which are getting installed, and the battery energy storage. We are talking about a thesis. So today, VCs have a significant thesis on battery energy storage because that's suddenly become huge as far as opportunity is concerned. But they
Yeah.
have this, and the concept of virtual power plants, which is significant in US and Europe, has been there at different stages of pilots already in India. Utilities ने खुद करे हैं, and significant deep level पे virtual power plants करें to exactly manage these kind of issues. The only thing is, which I feel, and again, possibly lack of information also, but what I understand is, इंडिया में हम किसी भी प्रॉब्लम को बहुत लाइटली लेते हैं, राइट? तो जब तक वो ग्रिड पूरी शट डाउन नहीं होगी ना, तो कुछ बदलेगा नहीं. दैट फोर्स विल नॉट कम, राइट? वो अभी कह रहा है चल रहा है, सो एवरीवन इज डूइंग देयर बेस्ट. अदानी मुंबई के अंदर 13 रुपीज 14 रुपीज पर यूनिट चार्ज कर रहा है, ठीक है? एंड टाइम ऑफ डे टैरिफ एंड एवरीथिंग इज अ बिग थिंग, बट इट इज नॉट इन एवरी पार्ट ऑफ द सिटी बिकॉज वहां की यूटिलिटी इतनी प्रोग्रेसिव नहीं है. जब तक वो डाउन नहीं होगी, शट डाउन नहीं होगी, शोर नहीं मचेगा, दे विल नॉट डू इट. बट एवरीवन नोस हाउ टू डू इट. एवरीवन हैज डन पायलट्स. इनफैक्ट आई वाज पार्ट ऑफ सम ऑफ दोस पायलट्स अर्लियर. I think they know virtual power plants, and I think that's another opportunity. But yeah,
Virtual power plant, I'm curious now. Like what exactly that does that mean?
very interesting. So virtual power plants have been there in Europe since like almost a couple of decades now. More than that also possibly. So Europe, US के अंदर time of day tariff. Uh, so US के अंदर, for example, grid is not as advanced as it is in Europe. I will say in some parts not as advanced as it is in India also, right?
Okay.
Because it's not a national subject. It's more like a state subject and all those things. तो वहाँ पे Europe and US have very high costs of electricity during the peak hours, which is like the office hours or night time, and very low. The gap or the delta is huge in off-peak hours, right? So it makes significant sense for them to put up battery inverters. Basically, हमारे यहाँ घर में lead acid inverters हैं, वहाँ पे भी lead acid और lithium के inverters होते हैं. Now they are being called as virtual power plants because the control of that inverter now is with a central company. So there are companies, right, startups and utilities which have basically given subsidies or invested like as a service kind of a thing in these batteries which are installed at different people's houses. अब जब गवर्नमेंट को ग्रिड मैनेजमेंट के लिए बिजली चाहिए, let's say grid is getting destabilized, they want everyone to charge. These companies get extra money, and that is the time when these power plants or these inverters get charged. And similarly, when the grid needs to be stabilized because it needs more energy, they give these inverters or these power plants which are installed at your house, 10 kilowatt, 15 kilowatt, money, extra money to push, instead of being used for the house, push that back into the grid.
Interesting. That's so interesting.
These
Yeah.
are decentralized virtual power plants. In fact, there is a company right now in US, Dell के founder, Dell का जो बेटा है, Michael Dell का son, his company is Base Power. So they've built about 30,000 of such virtual power plants in US, and obviously the scope is very different from India because India में though the Electricity Act says ये सब होना चाहिए, but हो नहीं रहा उस level पे. But US में है, and with just 30,000 installations, you can't even imagine. His company is worth $13 billion.
Wow.
India में 30,000 installations can happen just like that, right? The only thing is
Michael Dell effect भी है ना, Michael Dell में
हाँ,
थोड़ा
Michael
तो
Dell
वो भी
effect
है.
है 100%. His last race was $1 billion.
Yeah. But it needs that kind of money. But I think very, very interesting. That gives me the first opportunity, that founders can build in at the infra level, these virtual power plants. So that was pretty cool. I think I like the idea, and also I like the part that Neeti and me were talking in the morning that EV से खाली कुछ नहीं होगा. Like talk about the grids, and we gradually, organically, almost move to that discussion because that's the source, right, of everything.
No, so not just the grid. I think uh, it's mobility is much larger, as Ankan was saying, right? Mobility is much larger,
Yeah.
right? Everything
Yeah.
gets impacted in it. The only thing is those
Correct.
challenges for EV are much. If you really want EV, the challenges are much larger. अभी तो
Yeah.
हाइड्रोजन के challenges आएंगे, but then hydrogen is a big boys game. तो उसमें इतनी startups नहीं आएंगी, तो let's say we are not getting impacted. But because in
Yeah.
EV, in fact, Canada is one of the largest, like most advanced technology for hydrogen. Or everything was done in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Ballard Power in Vancouver and a lot of these guys in Toronto. But the whole idea is that it's a big boys game. So that's why, again, VCs might or might not get into it. EV is easy for everyone to get. There are thousands of startups. So that's why
Yeah.
it's the buzzword.
The buzzword. आ जाओ आप कनाडा फिर हाइड्रोजन पे जब मूड बन जाए तो नेक्स्ट कुछ
नहीं,
सालों में.
when I was there, I did look at this opportunity, but it just turned out technology, it's purely about deep tech. Hydrogen is again by deep tech or so you can build tech, but the companies which can take it forward are the Reliances, Adanis of the country. उसके
Yeah. You
अलावा
need the big
it
boys.
requires a
Yeah.
lot of push. You need the big
हाँ,
boys.
वो स्टार्टअप वाली गेम मतलब है नहीं है,
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Neeti,
need
yeah.
the big boys because you need to subsidize the cost of production. Abhi for hydrogen we are not able to crack that, but at some point solar bhi wahi tha. So I feel like जैसे अभी solar is the poster boy of energy transition investments. Hydrogen is going to slowly take that place, but slowly. Like it's a long curve. And the
Yeah.
same, expanding on the discussion that we were having, ki you need to expand the thesis, yes, but energy generation, different ways of generating energy. जैसे hydrogen is another way in which you can generate electricity. अभी जैसे in India, you see 70% we are still coal dependent. तो ultimately you're getting your EVs, but it's still like तुमने बस emissions shift कर दिए in the value chain. अभी वो upstream emissions हो रहा है instead of downstream. So वो energy, once you'll also have to focus on how cleaner generation is happening or how alternatively you're generating so that you can ultimately bring down the cost per unit. जैसे अभी it's lesser than fossil fuel, but it's still not affordable because the capital you need to scale, like the banking capital, the interest rates are 15 to 33%. तो जो benefit तुमको मिल रहा है of reduced cost per unit with electricity, cost per kilometer, sorry, with electricity, that gets completely absorbed in paying this capital. So interestingly, a lot of investments are also flowing in creating financing structures for EV and mobility. So you'll find VCs or big firms investing in just the financing structures for these kind of things.
I would like to use this opportunity to talk about what we are doing now. But I think
Absolutely.
very aptly put.
Yeah. Tanvir,
Sorry, I
एक
missed that.
second before we move on to that topic, which is very smooth from your end. Don't hate me for this. Otherwise, Shubham has taken out a bunch of data that he wanted to talk. So while you were talking, I think he was doing what he does best, crunching some data and has some numbers to talk, and then we come to what Tanvir was saying. Yeah, Shubham.
As we started with how many adoption, so there are overall 12% adoption in India, and I was shocked by checking this data. Like in the Northeast, we have the highest number of adoption. And here the tier 2, tier 3 city part will come, that Tanvir is saying like if any commercial vehicle is running in that cities, they have to run in that segment. So if we see Tripura and like all that states, so we have good amount of penetration. So if the exact number I want to say is like Assam has 14.30%, Delhi has 13.89, Kerala has 11.34, and Goa has 10.76. And highest is Tripura, 18.36.
Oh,
In
wow.
this 12%, Tripura is one of the largest state who is adopting in this side. And when it comes to the countryside, so last month when I was doing some more data crunching for just random killing the time, so in the for that things, I just talked to a few of the people, and they are saying like in our state we want to preserve the environment, and for that we want to go for this thing, and government is subsidizing on that side. And that lends me to one more thing that I think Tanvir, if you can add on this point, that would be great. So in the PM E-Drive side, where the government policy is going on, so on that side, I think they deployed good capital for the innovative vehicle and all. So how this thing is going on, and is it properly going state by state, and how this is helping the big companies or the startup to get the subsidies to build their infrastructure support, or like how this thing is going on? Yeah, as penetration is going more on the state that was not in the mainframe.
So now the good thing is that PM E-Drive subsidy today is very marginal, right? It
Yeah.
was heavy 2016 onward. It was very heavy, and it was the reason that a lot of these startups actually were able to fight, or let's say compete against the big guys like Bajaj, TVS, and all these guys. And they were able to bring in products which just because of the subsidy, people were able to adopt, and they were able to then move forward into their innovation cycle. But the good thing right now is, as a country, I call it EV 3.0, right? We are in a phase where subsidies don't matter, right? This PM E-Drive subsidy is 5,000 rupees, 2,500 rupees per kilowatt for a two-wheeler. Turns out to be 5,000 max. Does not go beyond that. It's marginal. It's nothing, right? So today people are adopting these vehicles because they want to adopt it, and because it's making sense for them. And so 2 and 3 में solved है. PM E-Drive for four-wheeler is again negligible impact. What is really, I think what states have done is, with no registration costs, or benefits in your ITR returns. That's helping to some extent as far as four-wheelers are concerned. But PM E-Drive, I think good thing. Government has slowly weaned us off of it. So now whatever growth that you see happening across EVs is all organic, right? It's the real growth. It's not subsidy driven growth. Delhi के अंदर आपको subsidy driven growth दिखेगी because 1st of July से उन्होंने two-wheelers के लिए 30,000, which is significant because they want 2028 no two-wheelers should be petrol. So I think that is a good focus. But every other number across the country that you see is not subsidy driven. And subsidies have been there. मतलब these subsidies जो अभी जितना भी मिल रहा है हमें रजिस्ट्रेशन कॉस्ट वगैरह में बेनिफिट, ये रहेगा, इससे गवर्नमेंट को कुछ लॉस नहीं होता. एंड दिस आई विल स्टिल काउंट इट एज ऑर्गेनिक ग्रोथ, which is a huge plus for the industry.
I think
No,
that's the
I
reason UK
agree.
is just completing this point. So as UK is more far better than US and India, is because in India and US we have the incentive and they have like the legal obligation in UK, and that's why they are moving far away. They are 3.5x faster than us in that segment as per the data.
No, so again, I think not able to comment there, but the interesting part now is that something that has happened in Delhi, we can see other states also adopting similar. So Delhi led the way with FY28 being the hard year. And if that happens, FY30, I think, should be the upper limit. You will find electric everything EV, right? And I think that will be a big plus because Delhi policy also includes, so like you said, it's law. So law ke andar, it's not only hard stop on adoption from petrol to EV, but it's also a hard stop for someone like a Zomato or someone like an Uber. These aggregators have to go all electric, right? And there are mechanisms which are now put in 10%, 20%, 30% year on year. They have to increase their aggregated partners. So आज अगर आप Zomato में two-wheeler petrol का लेके जाते हो, FY29 के अंदर they need 10-20% of those two-wheelers to be electric. So people have to bring in electric two-wheelers, otherwise they cannot adopt it. So everyone today is already working towards that play कि भाई if you are bringing in electric, that is what we are looking for. And इसमें fleet operators का कोई काम नहीं है.
See,
नहीं, पर
I would. Please go ahead.
Neeti, then you can talk first and then Ankan, since you had some point there.
Sure, I'll quickly wrap it up. So, while we are discussing the role of policy, I think EV, while we're looking at EV, what we tend to do is we homogenize the whole segment, but ऐसे नहीं है. So, if you talk about the role of policy for just your two-wheelers and for your three-wheelers, it was successful in pushing the supply side of the things because they permits नहीं दे रहे हैं, so they made sure कि अभी यही चलेगा यहाँ पे, so they pushed the supply side of the business. जबकि when you talk about your consumer cars जैसे individual level पे, yeah, there I agree to Tanvir's point कि policy is not making a big difference now. But I do feel कि when you talk about role of policies in EVs, you'll have to look at the different segments under it because हर segment का end user is very different and they're behaving very differently. That's why the role of policy is shifting. So on the consumer side of individual car owners, the policy would have to be constructed in such a way that they are subsidizing the demand and not the supply. They're encouraging people, whether it's by cutting the cost, whether it's by saying ki jaise benefits like you get 30,000 or if you get fined or so you have green tax also these days on the fossil fuel cars. So things like that can be used to use policy in the right way.
तो opportunity
So,
number
I
two,
think-
opportunity number two है इंडिया दिल्ली में आके बनाओ startup, right? So basically
नहीं opportunity नहीं से इसमें I
नहीं
think
नहीं यार
I'll
ऐसा
add one more point here. One point, sorry. Government has picked up four-wheelers and trucks and buses from a different angle also. There is something called as Cafe 3, Cafe 4 norms. Right? So Cafe 3, Cafe 4, इससे पहले Cafe 1, Cafe 2 था, which basically says that OEM का पूरा production pool. So if OEM is producing CNG cars, petrol cars, diesel cars, total emission has to be only this much. And this happens in 5-year terms, like a 5-year plan. Cafe 3 is a 5-year plan, which is live now, and then the Cafe 4 will come. But in Cafe 3, Cafe 4, we are now at par with European emission standards. That means government has mandated OEMs. They have to meet standards almost equal to European standards as far as the total pool is concerned. मतलब आज अगर टाटा ने 1 लाख पेट्रोल गाड़ी बनाई, 1 लाख सीएनजी बनाई और 1 लाख इलेक्ट्रिक बनाई, total emission on road is counted towards that. And the norms are so strict that without EV it cannot happen. राइट आप सिर्फ सीएनजी से या हाइब्रिड करके नहीं हो सकता. यू हैव टू significantly sell EVs. That means all of the OEMs have to significantly invest in EVs, promote EVs, and bring down the cost. So today, like again, I come to two-wheeler, three-wheeler because they are fairly advanced in terms of they started early. There were generation 4, generation 5, four-wheeler trucks के अंदर अभी generation 1, generation 2 चल रही है. So now you will see costs coming down as far as four-wheelers and trucks are concerned because of these investments and this back-end push happening. So automatically, one, this will impact demand. And after all that, I agree that softer benefits like toll tax and other tax waivers, I think that obviously helps.
Ankan,
So PM eDrive ko I've studied pretty well. I think we are out of time or not, but I'll just take this moment. Okay, so PM eDrive is basically focused on two different points. Okay, first thing is, आप अगर कोई private vehicle लेते हो, how much do you run? 50 kilometers a day max. But वही चीज अगर आप नीति जैसे बोले कि it's like 75 kilometers basic in tier 2 city for a commercial vehicle. Cities में तो और ज्यादा होता है. You go to airport and all those things. So it's all about how frequent is that particular vehicle running. For government, it is very, very, very important to focus, and they're focusing the right point. Okay, they are trying to put EVs in terms of buses. Or if you see all the state buses and all those things, or maybe the BMTC buses and all in Bangalore, they have put a good amount of effort to convert those buses into electric to start with, because these are heavy running. So government is seeing, in fact, that how many carbon dioxide component we are eliminating from the air. So that's why you don't see PME drive much benefiting the private vehicles, or maybe if you want to buy a Mahindra car for your personal use, you may not find the support of the government. Okay, because government on a larger picture needs to make the air clean rather than sell EVs, right? One is that. Second thing is they want to work on locations. Okay, if I consider Odisha and say Karnataka. Karnataka is deploying the first, second stage of their funds has been exhausted. Now they are going with second tier 2 cities in Karnataka. Whereas Odisha is just starting with Bhubaneswar. Okay, so they are in phase 1. Now what happens here is Karnataka has spent, okay, buses are electrified. Now, okay, we will go with, okay, charge point operators. Now we will go with tier 2 cities. This is how they have gone. But Odisha is now getting up to that pace. So it is now starting with buses. So they have procured 300 buses to run across the state of Odisha. Now they're building the infrastructure, and then they're releasing tenders and all those things. So from that prospect, it depends on which state are you, how advanced at that. And then the government's motive about PME drive to make air clean is the motive, not to sell EVs, right? So they will definitely promote the higher running vehicles. So these are the 2 points in the PME drive, which is hidden, not everyone acknowledges. Okay, so these are the facts, what we understand.
तनवीर आप अपनी बात कंप्लीट कर सकते हो. ट्रस्ट तेरा वाली भूले नहीं है हम. So
No, I was just segueing from what Neeti was saying up to segue kya, but I think this is, we're talking about a thesis and we're talking about VCs looking at the areas where there are a lot of gaps and there are a lot of opportunities. 100% EV ke alawa, so EV is just the center, right? Around it, 10 things are happening, and Neeti pointed out about how the financing of electric vehicle today goes from 15 to 33%, and whatever benefits a customer should ideally get, a lot of them get eaten away from because of these high interest rates. And as I said, we've been building in this space, and we were initially it was very difficult for us to get bank debt for electric vehicles. I'm talking 2016 to 2020, 21. Banks were like, yeah, we don't know what is an electric vehicle. We don't know चलेगी नहीं चलेगी. हमें कुछ नहीं पता है. हमें बैटरी we don't know nothing, and because we don't want to put our brains, you give your personal guarantee, take a loan, otherwise gone. And surprisingly, uh, it's still happening, right? A lot of banks came into EV financing because of FOMO. अरे EV कर रहे हैं, EV कर रहे हैं, EV कर रहे हैं, उन्होंने दबा के financing करी without looking at what the asset is, without understanding uh, asset use case fit, price points, technology, कुछ नहीं पता, because obviously they've been used to doing automotive financing forever. तो उसमें ध्यान नहीं देना पड़ता, दिमाग नहीं लगाना पड़ता, क्रेडिट देखो 700 सिविल के ऊपर है, go and finance. Unfortunately, EV is not like that, and that's what we understood few years back, and that's one of the things that we are solving at Trustera. So whatever tech we've built, right, it basically looks at what is the remaining useful life and residual value of an electric vehicle and allows us to do 10 things. And one of those things is helping financiers finance so that they can reduce their rate of interest. Because most of that 33% is for two reasons. One, maybe it's a small NBFC, तो उसको premium customer नहीं मिल रहे, उसको e-rickshaw या gig worker को finance करना है. So that's something that we can't help with. But the other is EV is a very high risk segment for them, because when they invested in the first wave, right, they had like 10% NPA, 15% NPA, because they invested vehicles or they invested customers जिन्होंने कोई भी गाड़ी खरीद ली और वो गाड़ी फिर दोबारा रीसेल नहीं हुई. So the biggest gap there, which is, I will say, 50%, they don't understand what is the resale value of an EV. And when we started, there was no resale value of EV, which is impacting their returns as far as NPAs are concerned. So that's the risk that they're factoring in कि यार हमें EV बिके ना बिके नुकसान होगा, इससे अच्छा better rate of interest charge कर लो, right? So I think that gap is where a lot of work can happen from startups. So as Neeti said, there has to be EV specific financing structures. They can start from taking support from DFIs. That's as far as the capital is concerned, but they can all, this has to include EV asset underwriting in the loan process, not just a customer credit underwriting, right? उसके लिए EV asset underwriting समझनी पड़ेगी, हम समझाते हैं, they can do something on their own. Most of these NBFCs which are trying to be green, वो सिर्फ एक IoT device लगा के बोलते हैं हमें समझ में आता है. But asset underwriting is little deeper, and if they can do it, right, these rate of interest will fall,
It's
right? And that's something that
exactly.
we are supporting on.
I think that's what we discussed. Shout out to Nehal building AMU, the NBFC for EVs. She was there the first episode to kick it off.
Yeah, I saw.
And I think that's again a big opportunity to also underwrite these assets. And so you were saying Trustera is also helping underwrite those
So we
assets
work,
as well.
yeah, we work with 12 banks and NBFCs. Today we are helping them underwrite EV loans so that they don't take undue risk on assets which don't deserve that risk. And in case of an NPA, they don't have to break bank. Today, so when we started 3 years back, an electric vehicle, so usually the rate of NPA, gross NPA in the industry was as high as 10-15%. Gross NPAs. Net NPAs are lower, but gross NPAs in EV were 10 to 15%. These vehicles were the realization once the bank resold those vehicles was 25, 30, 35%. And it was taking them 120, 180 days to resell the vehicle, electric vehicle. तो इसमें उनका पूरा ट्रस्ट टूट गया. यहाँ पेट्रोल की गाड़ी वो खड़ी करते हैं within 45-60 days it sells, but these were taking 120, 180 days, and that's where the trust broke, and a lot of these NBFCs went out of EV. Now they're doing 10 other things, not worth it. Since we've been doing it, the banks that we've been doing it with, we've brought it back down to 40-45 days. They are able to recover as high as 80%. It only has to change a simple process at their end. जब वो credit underwriting कर रहे हैं, they have to ensure that they look at the asset and they look at the asset customer fit before giving the loan. I'll give you an example without naming the NBFC, but a big cheerleader for EV financing, and they ended up financing a company called Log9. Unfortunately, Log9 today is not had they went bankrupt, but they invested in they financed vehicles of log 9 for a use case which did not need that kind of battery. So it's like a 2 lakh rupee two-wheeler where the battery itself is 1.5 lakh rupees. And when the NPA happened, the banks were left with an asset which was principal was 1,20,000, 1,40,000, and they were trying to resell that in the market. They were not able to sell it because obviously a brand new vehicle from a very good OEM is available at much lesser. How can someone buy a second-hand vehicle where the principal outstanding is 1,40,000? Like these are the basic things which a lot of big banks, big NBFCs did wrong. Just FOMO mein kar diya, and I think that's a huge opportunity uh, as we build this thesis to add to it.
Absolutely. I think financing and then also, underwriting these assets is what you said is a big opportunity, and that's what you are building as well. I didn't know that you're on the B2B side as well. I think I mostly knew that you are in the sort of the marketplace for. I think that's what you started off, the initial journey, right? But it's interesting that this
Yeah,
part of the
we were
business,
B2B. We started B2B, but
yeah.
B2 now we are more C2B.
Yeah, so interesting. Good that now we know that this is an opportunity and this is the company building it. Highlighting that in the report would be amazing. I think both of you are building important parts of the ecosystem, like all the other founders who are building. Everybody's going to learn as the ecosystem evolves, but having some sort of direction, some sort of thesis and ideas of what can be built. Maybe some VCs who listen to this are going to start looking at companies building a virtual, what you mentioned, what is the term for it?
Virtual power plants.
Virtual power plant. So that is again a very interesting one that came out. But I guess yeah, today at least we still scratching the surface on this because the scope is so big. But I guess these discussions need to be done more. And from what I originally also thought that we need more perspectives. But I think all of you added a lot more. Tanvir, you had been there in the ecosystem, so and a lot of things that even I didn't know you added, and I think I can say that for Ankan and Neeti as well. So thank you for doing that, and Neeti, Ankan, both of you as well. But would love to take your
Our pleasure.
closing thoughts on this, and then as a ritual we do sort of a small prayer to the universe in all my live streams, which I'll do and end the live stream today. But yeah, quick thoughts from all of you would be great.
I think
Ladies
Shubham
first.
can. Oh no, please don't do that. No, I'm going to let men be first because I don't need to be first.
चलो ये
Anyway,
भी
I
ठीक
think
है alphabetical.
Shubham, no,
Safe.
he's been
Okay.
quiet for some time.
हाँ.
So at the
Shubham, you
closing, yeah, yeah. You are saying something.
that's it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so for the closing thought, I think as Chetan wrapped up with the three things, like from the NBFC point of view, who are doing that thing, that's a great thing. But I think thesis is required, and in the thesis there will be, apart from these three parts, the most important part is the what can be the C-type charger for this EV industry, and that will be the like match winner for every infrastructure player in this game.
That's the pitch for Ankan then. Right, Ankan? What do you feel
Yeah,
now after the
definitely.
whole session? What do you feel like now, based on how you started? And I think, this whole discussion will lead to something that can be useful for everyone.
Definitely, yes. Every communication what we have with someone from the industry or outside definitely converges your thought process. That's something which, as a founder, we should always respect and learn. I did find a lot where people typically don't just take things for granted. At least what I had in last hour, 1 hour. We typically challenge things and then try to understand the backbone of it, the root cause, what they say, and that is something where these kind of conversations help a lot. Okay, you at the end of the day, making money is one thing, but then making something which can impact lives is more important. Okay, if these all conversations by 1% also improve the quality of what you are building, it's a win-win. So that's what I believe. It's very very important and very very useful, I found. So yeah, it's all
Good.
about the graph.
Yeah.
How in 1 hour you may have larger appetite of intake, and some cases you learn that over a period of week. So this was a very
Correct.
concentrated zone where in 1 hour I could grasp a lot of things.
Good that you came and there was value for your time. Neeti, what are your thoughts? And also,
Awesome.
we didn't touch upon your experience and what you're doing. So maybe you also talk about that, but just your thoughts on today's session as well.
Sure. So I think this was a great summarizing conversation that wherein the essence of an EV thesis is that we all agree that it needs to be expanded. We need to look at the whole value chain, right from the upstream, where we're talking about the generation of electricity that's actually going to go into the vehicle, to actually how it's going to end up, or things like risk writing. I even think that there's a great scope of just building tech and tools for asset evaluation for EV, and then even end of life use case scenario wherein an EV is what do you do if you want to discard an EV? Can you give it to a recycler and recoup some more value from it? That could be a great marketing pitch also, if that exists. Like,
Yeah, give
let's
it
say
to
you buy.
us.
Yeah.
We will give better value.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Tanvir, I mean, I love Tanvir's enthusiasm in product placement. Like, really love it. That's how every founder should be there, like, representing their products. But yeah, so Trustera, whatever Trustera is doing, we need more people doing that kind of thing, because now we need to progress towards circularity. And now I'll pick up the conversation that Chetan was nudging me to pick up, which is about climate and EV going hand in hand. Usually when you look at climate tech, you are just touching on your carbon credits and emissions. But if you look at the circular economy aspect of it, it's essentially just saying that, okay, there is a raw material that you don't have to extract from nature, or you don't have to engineer it by dumping a lot of money into a lab. It's just lying there in your dump yard. Just pick it up and see if you can create some value. So that's the essence of climate tech in things like that. So if the more we weave in this philosophy, the more value you can extract from the whole stream. So that's what I'm taking away from this conversation, is that just expand it to the entire value chain, from upstream to downstream, and then see where are the bottlenecks and what you could solve. Capital, of course, is a great thing. So I mean, is a very important lever to remove the bottlenecks. So
Yeah.
just working in the capital layer is also a great advantage at this point. And it's lovely that Tanvir validates that right here. So any founder listening to this, any VC listening to this, they have like a validated thesis now.
Yeah. And Tanvir almost feels like, the grandfather of EV thesis in India. But let me tell you,
And
uh,
you're the Dex story guy, so I'm the EV guy here.
you're the EV guy, but he's also he has true founder mentality, because I had put him on a spot 3 months ago also, that come and do a stand up around startups in one of my events, and he did that too. So
Wow.
Tanvir wears different hats for sure.
Surprisingly. Oh, it was fun. It was fun. I still fondly, and I'm waiting for the next time we'll do it, but it was fun.
So Tanvir, I hope this was fun too for you. I thanks for anchoring this, and I would really appreciate all of you, to bring in one more person, or maybe nominate and come again too. I mean, whatever you feel like. I mean, we have put you on a WhatsApp group now, where the previous episode people were also there, so that we can continue the dialogue. There's Karan there, one of the investors, Carrot Capital. Maybe Ankan for you. I don't know if you've spoken to him or not, but he's also in the group. But Tanvir,
Okay.
any closing thoughts on this?
No, I think agree with the understanding that EV, while helps being the center point, I think a lot more around it. Expanding that thesis is something that needs to be done. Uh, अब तो मोदी जी ने भी बोल दिया, and the tailwind. So what I'm excited about is, since Modi ji mentioned about EV, and after the recent oil shocks, EV has suddenly become the favor. Suddenly, EV has come back into focus, and the tailwinds are very, very strong, Chetan. Right now, policy level, investment level from the government, the tailwinds are so strong that at least for the next 10, 15 years, government has already pushed policies which are going to impact investments from different segments into billions of dollars only for EV. So EV is here now, any which ways, and it's the opportunity is not around the fleets and the OEMs and making the next best vehicle. The opportunity is actually what's happening in the adoption space. It's financing, it's after sales, it's residual value, it's resale, it's recycling, it's refurbishment. Actually, even before recycling, I always talk about refurbishment. So I think these are the areas where the focus has to happen. And this all forms part of infra along with charging and the intelligence around it. So I think these are the areas where a lot of work uh, and opportunities exist.
Hello, amazing, amazing. Good to hear that you also liked at least this initiative. And Shubham and Sama also on the call is there. They both are going now. The onus is on you guys. Like whatever they said, research on the data and send it out to the email newsletter. Shubham runs a email newsletter called Venture Unlocked. I want to give a shout out to
Amazing.
him, and I think a lot of VCs read that. And the point is that apart from my LinkedIn, YouTube, and other WhatsApp communication, Shubham will be sending this out to as an emailer as well. So over
Next
to you,
one.
Look
Shubham,
forward.
now. Yeah. So lovely. I mean, I want to wrap it up with a small prayer to the universe that, for making this happen today, this whole energy that we felt today, and rightly energy because of what we were talking. I feel all of you here have added to the conversation, and I wish all of you in the next 3 6 months, whatever you want to get, you get it, and hopefully the universe makes it happen. That's what I will manifest too. And yeah, EV founders and VCs, all of them, make the best investment, get the best investment, and yeah, world peace prevails. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome,
Amen.
guys. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Take
you so
care.
Bye.
Bye
much.
Thank
bye.
you, everyone.